Hello, I'm Emma-Louise Coffey and you're welcome to The Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. On this week's episode of The Dairy Edge, farm manager at Johnstown Castle, Aidan Lawless, updates us on the performance of the spring and winter milking herds, and he started by explaining the decision around dry-off date and feeding protocols.
Our expected calving date there is around the 25th of September, so we dried off the first, we dried them off in two batches this year. We dried off the first batch there just towards the end of July. Some of them, a few of them just had dropped off a bit in yield, but mainly just to give them the sort of, we'd like to give them 2 months dry period anyway. So, and then our last batch, we have about 40% still milking there this week, and they're just sort of on procedure for drying off now. So basically what we do is all the ones cows before we dry off, because they're milking quite well. A lot of them, they're averaging there about 17 or 18 litres, the group that we're due to dry there this week. So what we'll do is we just restrict their diet there for about a week to 10 days before the calve. So basically this group now are going grazing behind actual dry cows, because that's the only block that we have. But they'll be going into paddocks that are pretty well grazed out. They're just getting a sort of a last grazing off them. And pushing them a bit hard for a week, and we can see even on the computer there now inside, like that they're a good few of them coming up with depressed yields, which we're looking for really. So basically they're off all concentrate. Some of them would have been up until now would have been getting about 1.5 kilos concentrate. So they're off all concentrate, restricted diet for a week to 10 days, and we sort of find that we can knock maybe 6 or 7 litres off, and that they get down to, our target would be that they'd be sort of milking maybe less than 10 litres anyway when we're trying to dry them off.
And talk through the diet. So it's just essentially grazed grass. They're not getting any concentrate.
Oh, absolutely no concentrate, and sort of they're grazing tighter than we would normally. It's really just a sort of for the first bunch it was ideal, because we had milking cows grazing ahead, and then there were the group that we wanted to dry off. We had two groups of milking cows when we were starting to dry off. In the first bunch we had the cows that we wanted to keep milking and the cows that we were trying to dry off. Basically the cows that we were trying to dry off followed the good milkers, and they were only getting, we're still that target has been in and out of any grazing paddock within sort of 2.5 days or so, just not hitting regrowth threaten. But they're really only cleaning up. There's no topping, any topping around there. It's the dry cows that are doing it, or the cows that are going dry really. So. And
then post dry off, then what sort of diet are they on?
Well, we would just keep them restricted probably for another 7 days, just follow the same procedure, and then it's just grass. Sort of we would have all along we would have the dry cows up until now. The dry cows were following the milkers basically. So milkers are going into a paddock for a day, and then the dry cows were just finishing off the paddock for the second day then. So it's just to keep a way keeping condition off the cows really. We find sort of even just want to be watching that they try not to get over conditioned really. Now for the next, we'll be, because we're 100% off the calving herd here, we'll be fully dry on that herd now from probably I suppose from the about 25th of August until we start calving there. Then again, well, maybe towards just the last week of August anyway at some stage, and then until we can start calving around probably the 20th of September. We'll be dry for 3 weeks, fully dry.
And I suppose we're at the end of lactation for these winter milkers, say from the 2018-2019 lactation. What sort of performance are you seeing in terms of kilograms of milk solids or yield with these cows across the season?
Yeah, they performed very well this year. I suppose they had a tough year maybe last year in terms of and the drought and a bit more restricted. Now we did suffer probably a mini drought, I'd call it, there in July of this year. We were probably glad to see the rain. We just, more so than some areas, for a lot of July we probably only grew maybe half the grass we should have been growing. But other than that, it has been a very good year. We got out very early. We were out in January grazing, and we had grass in the diet for nearly every day since really. So it was we had the cows to do it with the autumn herd. So that probably helped a bit in production, and we would have seen our highest. We've recorded it's about 620 kilos of milk solids, but that sort of, it works back out to about between 25 and 30 kilos off that for milked calves or dumped milk or bad milk. So it would be sort of probably around 590 delivered. It ties in with that, which would be about maybe 20 kilos higher than what we would have been. 25 kilos higher than what we would have averaged for the last 2 years. So we're very happy with that. That would have come off a yield per cow maybe around 7,600, where we would normally be around 7,400. So a couple of hundred litres in milk yield, but probably the breeding maybe as well as coming in, that the milk solids percentages are lifting a little bit year on year as well.
So that's interesting. I suppose you're driving the milk output in terms of yield and solids, in terms of the constituents are lifting too. In terms then of fertility, I suppose at the end of the season, what sort of fertility performance did you see? I suppose we can express it in terms of percentage empty.
Yeah, on the autumn herd, it was very good. We haven't scanned the spring herd, but just on the autumn herd, we were below 10%, about 8% empty on the autumn herd, which it's similar enough to last year. So for the last couple of years, we've been very good. We'd be delighted with that, really. Like, it's off a 12-week breeding period in the winter. Now we have a few other cows that we didn't want to go and calf, so we have a few more than the 8% to pull out, but that'll be optional after that. So any of those cows that didn't go and calf are finished now. They'll be just going off out of the herd, sort of as either just milking sold straight out from the farm as milking cows, are just dried off. There's a couple of dried off. The high cell count ones are dried off, but we won't be looking at because it's 100% autumn herd. Even though we have spring cows milking here as well, that's the system they're in, and they don't. When we did have up until this year, we would have had a split calving herd on some of the trials, but even with that, we would have tried to minimise any carryover cows to maybe less than 1 or 2 cows out of the 60 cows, really. So
and that was actually my next question, Aidan. You know, with a lot of herds that are engaging in, say, split calving or winter milk, where you see an empty cow in the herd, you might say, God, she's a great milker, or, she's a good cow and I like her. So people would be inclined to hold on to these cows and carry them over. So you were saying that you minimise this to maximum 1 or 2 cows. What is the decision process around that?
Well, really, no matter how good the cow is, she's not really good enough if she's not going in calf every 3, 6, 5 days for us, I suppose, in that terms. Like, we did have, I suppose we had the option because we had enough replacements generated coming back in as well, and maybe because of the trials that were going on here, that was a targeted one that we did want to minimise. Now, we did, just towards the back end of last year, we did milk on. I maybe what I'd say to farmers, if they are going to hold on to the cow, get the milk out of her, and say may finish her, but don't put her back in calf again anyway. If they are milking all year round, it's probably, if she's milking, she's in the milking herd, and that's fine. But I wouldn't be looking at trying to recycle her and breed her again. Maybe just sort of, if they want to generate, maybe the value maybe of a milking cow, especially last year, was low enough because of the demand on fodder and all. But some farmers might have done that just to milk them on, finish them when they sort of dry up in milk yield, then just finish them straight to the factory. But we would definitely trying to minimise any recycling of the cows and sort of breed fertility into it. So. And
then if we turn our attention to the spring calvers, what sort of performance are you seeing at the moment from them, Aidan?
Spring calvers are they're just tipping along nicely. They haven't they're milky. They're about 23 litres at the moment. They're doing about 1.8 kilos of solids. They're butterfat 420 and the protein around 370, between 365, 375. So we'd be happy enough. I think they're up about 360 kilos of milk solids at the moment. They would be hoping to go over maybe 520, maybe depending on how they go. That'd be a little over, maybe a little over half a ton of concentrate, probably 600 kilos of concentrate for the year. That's just they're a similar type cow to the autumn herd, but there's extra concentrate going into they're different. They're just calving different time of the year. The concentrate has to go into the autumn herd because they're being fed during the winter, and we are getting some of that back in returns of solids. But the spring system, they're just motoring away now. They are getting, because we have a new trial going in here on the spring system with just looking at different species, grass species, multi-species mixes. We're doing a good bit of reseeding this year, so they're still on 2 kilos concentrate because we're tight enough just on grass, and we're trying to build the big covers there for the spring, the autumn now as well on the spring herd. So.
And with the 360 kilos, Aidan, that you mentioned in terms of milk solids, like that's, I suppose, really good performance, this far in the year, and there's, still potentially 3 full months of lactation left. What did those cows peak at?
The spring ones probably peaked around 30 litres, I'd say, 31 litres. Would have been slightly higher. Our autumn ones would normally maybe peak. We try to keep a flatter peak at the 28, 29 litres. With spring ones, it did probably. The spring ones again had a good year. In general, we were out and we had grass from the whole year, and the conditions were good. And they performed well right throughout the year. So the peak would have been around 30, 31 litres, I suppose.
And then turning our attention to grass, Aidan, you mentioned that you had a dry spell in July, and I suppose not anyway as severe as last year, but I suppose a moisture deficit all the same. If we look right now, what sort of growth rates are you achieving?
At the moment there for last week, we were around 55 or 60, and like just grass is bombing. Again, you could really see it might even go a little bit above that there maybe this week. I don't, especially if the temperatures are due to get mild there again at the weekend and all. So we would have, we're getting a flush of grass probably now from the bit of restricted growth, maybe in July as well. We got a lot of, probably with less rain maybe than some areas in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think we've had about 90 mil of rain or so, or some areas have gone over maybe 120, 130 mils or more. But again, the ground is in ideal conditions. Ground is still firm and dry. The moisture is there now, and the heat is there, and the nitrogen we had sort of skipped. Well, we didn't really skip it, but we extended one round there just towards the end of July. We pushed it out a week or two until we were sure there was rain coming. We had soil moisture deficits up at nearly 50, which is you go above that now. There was just probably the two driest paddocks on the farm were starting to lose grass. Other than that, we were, again, like I was saying, we were just block rowing as much as we should have, but there was a couple of them just starting to burn just before the rain came. So it was only nothing. Any year we might get that for a couple of weeks, and some of the drier parts of the farm here, because our rainfall would be annual rainfall would be really only maybe around 900 mil or so anyway. So you know, but it was short lived this year anyway. So the grass production, I think, for the year is probably it's around 9 or 9.5 tons or something, I think. So ideally we probably lost maybe a half to 3/4 of a ton of grass maybe there in that July period, that when we were only really growing half of what we should have been. But other than that, we had good silage yields of first and second cut silage. We have on the treatments that should have the grass enough, we have silage made for all those treatments. So with plenty of silage, plenty of surplus bales made a bit from earlier, and there'll definitely be a good lot of surplus bales coming out off the autumn system there now in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I'd say.
And just like, say, 9.5 tons or so to date in 2019, Aidan, what sort of production are you targeting based on, say, your 3 or 5 year average in terms of grass production?
We'd be targeting to grow, well, obviously we're trying to increase it, but I don't think it's that this year. It won't really anyway, but we'll be targeting to grow sort of 14.5 tons, ideally more than that, but it's not going to, I'd say if we do grow 14 tons this year on average on the grazing paddocks there. Now it'll be a little bit up and down this year because we have done a lot of reseeding as well, so that might hit us a little bit, but generally with the reseeding we're nearly able to, it doesn't really hit that production that much if you can get in and out and reseed it within the 6-8 weeks or so, like we're and we have sort of staggered that throughout the year because we're doing a good bit with changing over to the different species. We have some on the autumn system, then we're planning on taking out some more for reseeding there at the moment.
And when you mention species, Aidan, what sort of variety of species are you putting in?
There's chicory, there's plantain, and then there's a red clover, white clover, and then 2 grass seed varieties in it as well. So it's only something that we've nothing really to talk about, Jeff. We're just getting them established at the moment, but anyone that's coming for open day and they can see them, some of them on the ground, but we wouldn't really, all we have is there's very positive results from Gielan's plot trials there over the last couple of years, so we just want to see really how they perform under grazing. Some of the varieties would have been established in other places, I think maybe in lines, and had been grazed, and very good performance from sheep and lambs on them, but we don't have sheep or lambs here, so we're more interested how the cows will perform, whether they'll eat the mixes, crop sort of production, and I suppose persistency. Then it'll be a longer term trial looking at how persistent it is, and then just looking at maybe some of the environmental benefits then, if there's reduced emissions from reduced fertilizer inputs, or there's a lot of measurements to be taken from that point of view as well. So it'll be interesting on that. It's only a small group of the spring herd. Like we still have our predominant herd here is there's be over 60-70% of the herd will be autumn herd still, and we'll be just looking at that would be on 2 different splits in the autumn herd. just looking at the different stocking rates and different feeding regimes on that.
And I suppose we've gotten a really good picture of what's happening right now on the farm and what I suppose has happened across the last lactation. I suppose if we turn our attention to, I suppose, the coming weeks, you're holding a national winter milk event at Johnstown Castle. What can we expect on the day, Aidan?
The 4th of September, it's on. Everybody is welcome. Yeah, it's just there's 6 or 7 boards really. And I suppose it could be of interest maybe to whether you're winter milk or spring milk really is an interest. Like a lot of it, the principles are the same. And so we have Brian Gary is talking on a board there just on winter feeding. A bit of talk on sort of just even the percentage of fibre in the diet and your silage quality for milking cows, whether they be winter calving or spring calving, I suppose. And just then different, maybe even just looking at top length of silage and whether we should straw in the diet, and even looking a bit at maybe still we've done a good bit of work over the last few years on, say, part of winter herd for winter milking cows, reducing the overall protein in the diet to just try to maybe flatten the yield a little bit and keep conditioning on the cows when we're trying to get them back in calf, and then just sort of have a flatter lactation yield, but they'll still, and if you can get them out to grass early, they'll perform well. So that's sort of a feeding board. Then I suppose myself, I'll be covering a bit on grazing management and just sort of what we do throughout the year, just sort of from what might be different in even the spring herd, or a lot of the principles are the same, but maybe just carrying maybe lower covers there coming into the next month or two, just to making sure that we're not really trying to graze anything heavier than maybe 1800 for freshly calved cows, and then how we build up grass for the spring turnout because we have such a demand. That sort of side on the feeding side of it, and then I suppose what we're feeding then is looking at the type of cow we have, and what type of cow, sort of how cows in general across a range of winter farms are performing. And Richie O'Brien, I think, and Martina Garney will be looking at that. We'll have some of the cows here on display in the day with our autumn in calf heifers that will be due to calve within the couple of weeks. So and tied in with, I suppose, the breeding again is the fertility side of it. We would have Stephen and Vincent Tracy, I think, are looking at the first fertility in terms of just how we manage the dry cows coming up to calving for an autumn calving herd, and even just a bit on uterine health and maybe pre-service scanning and all. Stephen will cover a bit on that. And then, of course, Joe will have to be here as well to talk a bit about the trial that we've sort of has concluded, really, I suppose, in the last 3 years. So what we were looking at on the split calving model and sort of terms of milk production across the year and how that affected peak milk supply from a processor and farmer point of view. So that, and then on the other side of it, we will have David Wall, who's familiar with a lot of farmers there. He's done an awful lot of work on soil fertility and just nutrient management of the soils and getting maximum performance from your grass by having good soil fertility. So he'll be talking, have a board on that, along with Gielan. Then Gielan Grange is talking on the multi-species. I'll be down there with him on that, just showing where the plots where we have established and maybe a few results on his trials so far to date. So there's plenty for everyone, I think, and everybody is welcome.
And what time are you kicking off, Aidan?
We're kicking off. It'll be a quick. It'll be really like just a sort of a farm walk event. Really, like it's kicking off at 11 o'clock. Depending on numbers and all, we'll have groups going around. So we'll have 4 or 5 groups going around. And like I said, I think there's about 7 boards altogether there. So 20 minutes to per board or so. Hopefully, you'll be, if you come around 11, you'll be out and sort of home again, sort of half one or whenever. We're more than welcome to stay a little longer, but we'll go through the route, and that's all. There's really, it's straightforward enough from that point of view.
And the event is open to farmers and industry, Aidan?
Absolutely open to, like I said, even we would from any of the times where before when we'd have open days, like we'd get local farmers who might not necessarily be in winter milk, but like they'll still see the same principles applied as very similar grazing practices as they might see in Moore Park, maybe with just a different animal that's calving at a different time of the year, or like I said, sort of for all split calving or winters, there's something for everyone there. Maybe I think it's just to come in and see what's happening on the farm here. It's a couple of years, I think, since we've had a sort of an open day at this time of the year, which going maybe a little bit in the wrong time, and that we won't really have too many cows milking, but it maybe suits us if it's a bit quieter. So like I said, all the autumn herd will be dry, but maybe on a lot of farms it might be a bit quieter time of the year. They'll stick a trip down before the ploughing or something as well. So.
That's great, Aidan. We look forward to the day.
Thanks, Emma-Louise.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to Aidan Lawless for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify, and for more information go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm Emma-Louise Coffey, and join me next time for your Dairy Edge.